we have the Patriot Act now, and they're trying to get RFID chips, and there's cameras all over the place watching everybody, body scanners at airports. You know, they're trying to get it now where they X-ray people. You know, I mean, my personal thoughts on 9/11, I think that something seriously did go wrong within the government, and I feel as though they let it happen. And I think it does need opening for a proper, true investigation. But your thoughts on that, and then RFID chips, cameras in airports, and our liberties being basically taken away from that, if you could, you know, go with that.
Right. Well, my thoughts on 9/11 and a new investigation are this. As most people know, I'm a financial consultant. In addition to that, I'm a pyrotechnician. I do professional fireworks shows, and I've done so for years now. Now, I'm liable for people's safety. To a certain degree, the government is liable for our people's safety. Okay? If I have an incident on one of my shows due to my negligence, I get sued. Okay? I might get incarcerated. My career would certainly be over. Now, we had a federal air marshals program in place. During the Clinton administration, they took that program away, and they never insisted that the private industry would pick up some kind of method of security to replace the federal air marshals program. For those that don't know, the federal air marshals were federal agents on planes with guns on high-risk flights, and sometimes just on random flights, to prevent an incident like 9/11 from happening. So for this to go on, I mean, if you ask me, it's a clear-cut case of gross criminal negligence. However, nobody in our government has been prosecuted for gross criminal negligence. Now, no matter what you want to believe or not believe about 9/11, I have a hard time believing that any rational person could deny that gross criminal negligence took place. Getting on to the police state, the RFID chips, the Patriot Act, the body scanners, all of this nonsense, 9/11 has basically been a catalyst to destroy freedom. I mean, the terrorists, the whole idea of it is that the terrorists hate freedom and they want to destroy freedom. Well, when we have a society that is moving further and further away from freedom to the point where it's becoming almost unrecognizable rather, as free, well then aren't we letting them win? And that's what Nigel Farage, I've seen him say that recently also. He's the former leader of the UK Independence Party. And he's going to bat and fighting for freedom the way I'd like to see more of our Republicans doing here. So for anybody that's not familiar, I would definitely suggest look him up.
Well, I think, there's a lot of money to be made in the security industry. And, they're looking for every excuse possible to try and push through more legislation to take more of our easy money, tax money, because it's easy money. Government money is easy money. I mean, there's a reason why the private sector is called hard work. It's because you have to produce things, and you have to go out there and produce a service or a good. And government money is really easy. And security industries know this, and they know that they can oligopolize the market. I mean, TSA itself has basically monopolized our airport security. Don't you think that's more of a threat, too?
Well, sure. And, Eisenhower warned us of the military-industrial complex. And this is what we're experiencing right now, is a failure to heed those warnings. JFK gave warnings, too. And, just the label conspiracy theorist is thrown about on a whim by the mainstream media or, even by the public that are being manipulated, in a sense, by the mainstream media, which, getting off on a tangent a bit, reminds me of Pavlov's dogs and Pavlov's experiments with placebo. I've done I'm a self-educated individual, and I've read a lot of psychology books. And placebo studies have proved throughout history that 20% of society, you really can't control them. They're free thinkers. Okay, you have another 20% that are easily controllable, and then you have the 60% in the middle that if something is impressed upon them repeatedly, they're more likely to be susceptible, but you won't get the entire amount. And that's what we're going through right now. And if we had more people making efforts to self-educate, looking at history of psychology, of governments, and how these types of things develop, then we would have a much better chance of, restoring freedom in this country.
Yeah.
And we are growing in numbers at a rapid rate, and it is very encouraging, but we all have to push, we all have to stand up, we all can't be afraid to speak out, and when somebody calls you a conspiracy theorist, make sure that you can back up what you're saying factually, because there is disinformation out there, and there are conspiracy theories. But if you could back up what you say factually, at least you're in the right. Maybe you could educate somebody else. Maybe at the moment they won't take it to heart and understand it, but maybe you'll encourage them to research on their own, and they eventually will understand it. But when the other side, when all they could do to defend themselves is to throw around the label conspiracy theory, when you look at the facts and the facts prove them wrong, that's an extremely weak argument, and it doesn't hold any water.
Well, Anthony, the whole humanity is based around conspiring. I mean, if you just look at, there's a word in the dictionary, it came from somewhere. We humans conspire. I mean, it's not always negative. I mean, in some cases, a lot of people are saying this is a negative, conspiring. And I'm not, all out conspiracy theorists. I do know that there's a lot of wrong when other people, believe that they have ownership over you, and there's a lack of self-ownership. I do fight against that. But, this is now extending into a whole new realm in an international level. I mean, let's look at the IMF, United Nations, NAFTA, CAFTA, the G20 summit, all of these international bureaucracies that produce nothing at a marginal gain, that literally, have they institute wars for us. We have to go under, UN resolutions for different wars. I mean, look what the Clintons in different places, they even did it themselves, and those were supposedly Democrats. And yet these people actually supported them. It was kind of ironic because they obviously had no idea what was going on. But you look on the government realm, and now they're calling for a global New Deal. That was Gordon Brown, what he was calling for about a year ago, and saying if we don't have these international bureaucracies pumping in, trillions of dollars from all these states so that we can spur the smaller countries into prosperity, then we're just going to, things are just going to take a turn for the worse. Now we have to have a stimulus, a global stimulus, as if these bureaucrats can just distribute wealth and create prosperity. And, well, it just kind of shocks me how people can believe the system works without, even though we have so much proof of it failing. Where do you stand on all these, global governments, not only in the sovereignty that we've lost in our own, society over here and our own choices? What do you have to say about the, NAFTA and the UN and all of these other international bureaucracies?
All of these things shake me to the core of my soul as a patriot and as a Christian. And, where our country's founded on Judeo-Christian principles, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. And when you go back, if you've ever heard of the story of the Tower of Babel, that was man's first attempt at global governance. At the end of the story, God destroyed the tower and everybody came out of it speaking different languages, and then man was separated. So, we're approaching this new age Tower of Babel, and anybody that's of the Christian or the Jewish faith, whether they know it or not, is inherently against what's going on. And the last statistic I heard was that 78% of the country of America considers themselves Christian, and I'm not sure what the Jewish percentage is either. But between those two percentages, you have a majority of our society that is inherently and by faith, again, whether they realize it or not, against global governance. And then you have a percentage of people that believe other religions or don't believe in anything. They just believe in freedom. And, people that believe in freedom are inherently against this global governance as well, whether they know it or not. And,
what about, go ahead, sorry.
This whole global scheme is proven that it doesn't work. The European Union has a currency that's ready to melt down. They've pushed through this Lisbon Treaty. Are you guys familiar with the Lisbon Treaty?
Yeah.
The 27 nation states,
oh, yeah.
And it's taken them, I think, 7.5 or 8.5 years to push through. The French and the Dutch voted no in 2005. Ireland voted no more recently, and these no votes are just ignored. They'll hold another vote. They push it through using